Hi, I'm Luci Malin. I'm the worship associate for this Sunday. It's good to see you all here. When you reach for the stars, you are reaching for the farthest thing out there. When you reach deep into yourself, it is the same thing, but in the opposite direction. If you reach in both directions, you will have spanned the universe. That was written by Vera Nazarian. Come, whoever you are welcome here, no matter your age, your size, the color of your eyes, your hair, your skin, you are welcome here. No matter your gender, whom you love, how you speak, whatever your abilities, you are welcome here. You are welcome whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears in your eyes. You are welcome here. No matter what you've experienced in the past, no matter what awaits you in the future, you are welcome here. Whether you believe in God all of the time, some of the time, or none of the time, you are welcome here. This is a community of open minds, loving hearts, and willing hands. As we gather this morning, let us pause and acknowledge that the ground upon which we gather is the ancestral and current home of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. With humility for the ways in which we have unwittingly participated in the harms perpetuated in the past and present, we seek now to learn a new way forward. We begin to partner, to ally and witness with our Indigenous siblings and friends and bring forth a new sacred dream of community restored, and a world healed to a greater wholeness. And I'd also like to say, remember that we are moving up into the mountains and the hills, and the cats and the bobcats and the lions and the deer and everybody else are coming down here. It's a human-caused problem. Welcome to all who are gathered here with us in the sanctuary and those who are at home in our virtual audience. We extend an especially warm welcome to those of you who are here for the first time, or the second time, or the third. We are so glad you are here with us, and we look forward to getting to know you. Let us take a moment now to fully arrive and welcome each other with joy. We'll take a couple of minutes and you can talk to the people around you, and we'll be right back.
As we light our chalice, I invite Claire to come forward, who's going to help us with our chalice lighting this morning. Come on up. The chalice is the symbol of our faith and the light of our commitments to love and justice. As we light our chalice, receive these words of invocation. Written by Richard S. Gilbert. We meet on holy ground, brought into being as life encounters life, as personal histories merge into the communal story. As we take on the pride and pain of our companions as separate selves, we become community. How desperate is our need for one another, our silent beckoning to our neighbors, our invitations to share life and death together, our welcome into the lives of those we meet, and their welcome into our own. May our souls capture this treasured time. May our spirits celebrate our meeting in this time and in this space, where we meet on holy ground. So as our chalice is lit, let us now participate in the ritual of bringing its flame into our hearts by saying our chalice lighting words together. They are in your order of service if you don't know them. We light this chalice for the warmth of love, for the light of truth, and for the energy of action. And if you want to say the flames of resistance, you can do that too.
This community, our church and its many ministries, are only made possible by the gifts you give of your time, your talent, and your treasure. Many of you pledge monthly to support our work, and for this, we are grateful. Your gifts help to ensure that we are able to live our values of love, justice in the world. Part of the ministry at South Valley includes our Sunday worship offering, sharing our offering with a charitable organization that aligns with our principles and values. This month, we have partnered with Voices for Utah Children, an organization that advocates and advances policies, practices that are good for all of Utah's children. Voices for Utah Children is making a difference in our kids' lives by raising awareness, influencing policy, and uniting our community. Please join me in reading the offertory words. They are printed in your order of service, which I think you have on your phone. We are this church. We are its hands, its heart, its voice. Together, we share the wealth of this community and sustain it with our gifts.
So all of you who are gathered here in this sanctuary and to those of us who are gathered online are invited to participate in our ritual of joys and sorrows. Those in the virtual community are invited to use the chat box in our Zoom space to share your joys and sorrows with one another. And those of you who are gathered here in the sanctuary are invited in a moment to process up and put a stone in the water. We will conduct this ritual in silence, holding space for all that is our life, the complexities and the joys. And at the close of the ritual, when all those who have wished to add a stone have done so, I will add one final stone to represent those joys that are unexpressed but still held in our hearts. So I invite you now to come forward. How few spaces there are for silence. Yes? And how lovely that silence sounds. Add a final stone for those in our online community. May your joys and sorrows now be connected to those in this space. And for that which remains unspoken, but still held in community. So I have a new water bottle. I just want to say it says Loyo on it, so you all know it's mine. My partner gave that to me after she heard the story from Silly Hat Sunday last year about Revlo. It's just good to be back with you. I've been gone for 5 or 6 weeks, and it's just good to be back. So thank you. It's good to see your faces. Oh, and I'm the Reverend Lora Young. I don't think I ever said that this morning, in case you're new. It's nice to meet you if this is your first time. So this summer, our worship team led the congregation in exploring what it means and how it feels to intentionally set aside time for our souls. And souls is kind of a squishy word in society. We don't always know what that means, but I'd offer to you this morning that our working definition for souls could be that mysterious and ineffable piece of ourselves that we may understand as that which connects us, connects us to other people, and connects us to all that is beyond our vision and our life. I think that taking such time to connect to self and to others and to the wider universe beyond human life is essential. It's essential for our physical, mental, emotional, and dare I say, spiritual health. Time away from the push and pull of daily life renews us and deepens our capacities for dealing with the difficulties of life. I think it also has an extra special secret power. that I think is a bit overlooked. Time spent in reflection and renewal engenders in us a sense of place, a sense of place. And place is very important to our sense of belonging. And place is more than just grounding us in the moment, as we often talk about in meditation. That's the first step, is grounding ourselves within our own bodies and in our own lives. The step beyond that is to ground ourselves into our family and friend systems, and ultimately into the very landscape in which we live. Many of us spend most of our time in the landscape inside our cars, going from one built place to another. And we often don't take time to remember the land and the landscape. Beyond just grounding us in a moment and in this sense of place, time for renewal acts as a portal to those larger questions and connections. Those questions that make us find feelings like awe and wonder at this vast and wild universe that we live in. The more that scientists plunge the depths and breadths of our universe, the weirder and weirder it gets. So it's essential to take that time. And so I was and have been delighted that, on purpose or not, the worship teams made this connection between time for your soul and home. They had moved, intentionally or not, from inviting us to take time for our souls to inviting us to consider and embrace home. That beautiful expression of our longing to find and be found as to belonging with and for one another. And what an excellent space to gather in this fall as we begin this next round of church life together, such as it is, to be at home with one another, to be at home with ourselves, to be at home in the universe, and to engage seriously with the biggest questions of life and wrestle with them in community with one another until we come to whatever next answer is revealed within our own hearts. South Valley has been that kind of place for 40 years. And we got another 40, 80, 120 or more years to go. My math is limited, so we'll keep it at 120. This longing to belong. And I have to move, get a little blinded here by the light of the sun. This longing to belong, as reflected in our desire to find and cultivate home, feels really important right now in our current culture. There are a lot of complex social, economic, and technological forces pushing and pulling on our attention these days, and trying to incorporate the healthy ones and resist the ones that would bring us towards despair or disillusionment can feel a little overwhelming. And it's obvious to most of us that our sense of place, grounded in a sense of shared reality, is increasingly tenuous these days in the zeitgeist of our culture. And while I'm not entirely certain that we ever really had the kind of broad agreement that nostalgia would have us recall, it is clear to even a casual observer that our liberal democracy, our democratic principles, and the rule of law are under pressure right now. Our liberal democracy has never yet been fully realized. We know that. That is why we work hard in this congregation to create and hold space for diversity, equity, and inclusivity, because we know that it takes attention and effort to create and sustain beloved community. It takes effort and attention to create that space whereby there can be change. Brene Brown talks about this as being the space between stimulus and response. She writes it as two parentheses in between stimulus and response, and that we put our hands in there and we expand so that we can create some change. We can interrupt our assumptions about how we think things ought to go, and we expand. This community has been doing that for decades. Without this articulated sense of what belonging looks and feels like to others who are very different from ourselves, our inclusivity cannot progress towards radical inclusivity. If belonging is our goal, which is not the same as signing the book of membership here at South Valley, if belonging is the goal, then welcoming is the start, but it is not the end. We must do more than welcome. We must befriend and companion all the strangers who walk through our doors. For each of us was once a stranger to this place. Beloveds, that is what I call us to as we launch into our next 40 years as a congregation. To befriend each and every person in this community, for this place to be a place of friendship and connection. Yes, I know you come from my scintillating sermons, but what I really care about is that you have a friend or two or 10 in this congregation. And that's what I call us to do in this community, is to commit ourselves to the beauty of creating and sustaining friendship. Now, it may seem like that's a far leap between that and what I'm going to say next. But this fall, we're launching a strategic planning process, and at the center is friendship. At the center is friendship. We're a bit overdue for some strategic planning, and we'll blame COVID for that. But I'm happy to let you know that the board of directors, the staff team, and I have begun to outline our dreams and goals for what this process could look like. And we have a very talented team of 3 beautiful, talented, powerful women leading this process. And I think that's pretty cool. Chris Berg, Maria Anderson, and Anna Smythe will be our leaders in the strategic planning process. And this process will begin to kick off in the next couple of weeks. And we plan to present a plan to the congregation in May of 2024. And I think it's easy when we imagine strategic planning to think about mission and vision and goals and outcomes and deliverables and checkboxes and charts and PowerPoint presentations. And I want to say that that's a lot. I heard that. Like, my heart beats fast. And so I want to caution us from driving too hard down this path of thinking that if we can just check enough boxes, we will somehow arrive at beloved community. It's important to get the fundamentals of running a nonprofit organization down correctly. Yes, that is essential to strategic planning so that we can have sustainable staff and buildings and those sorts of things, but it is not the goal in and of itself. And our success as a congregation is not measured by participation levels, membership size, or the size of our endowment or our bottom line, because that would be a transactional approach to church. And church is decidedly not transactional. It's relational. We are here to do life with one another, not deliver spiritual goods and services in exchange for a donation. And that's kind of a countercultural message in a very capitalistic society. Most of us in this room have thought a little bit about capitalism. We've thought about what's happening in the world. We've wondered how we're going to address the problems that are endemic to a society that has increasing economic inequality. In fact, the highest levels of economic inequality ever observed on the planet. We think about those things. But most of us probably don't think about how those are related to salvation. Most of us in this room have walked away from traditional Christian ideas of salvation by grace. The idea that grace is unearned and freely given by God, if that was even part of your upbringing to begin with. And yet, it is my observation that despite having taken this theological stance, many of us are still very susceptible to feeling like we have to somehow earn grace. So we walk away from this idea that grace is easily given, but then we land back in to grace by works. And that, my friends, is not theological laziness. That is the imbuing of capitalism into our psyche. That is the imbuing of capitalism into our psyche. And it reflects how difficult, if not downright impossible, it is to extract ourselves from a capitalistic, exploitative, colonialist project. Those are all my 50-cent words for today. This system into which we were born that is not set up for success, despite the narrative that you can pull yourselves up from your bootstraps. That is so often not the case. And neither stance, just so you know, that grace is given by God or that you have to earn your grace, neither one of those is particularly Unitarian Universalist. As UUs, we have long rejected the idea that the afterlife is what is going to make things just, right, equitable, fair, kind, and loving. We have long been committed to the theological stance that what matters is salvation here and now. That justice matters now. That kindness matters now. We demand that those be present here and now. And yet, capitalism is all we know, right? I can no more extract myself from that than I can from an economy that requires me to use gas and electricity and gas and cars and oils and plastic. I can't just stop. I wouldn't be able to buy crackers. Now, this is not to say that there aren't some benefits of capitalism. I don't want you to hear that and think that I hate everything capitalistic. Obviously, I benefit from capitalism. We all do in some very important ways. But this is not an advertisement for capitalism. This is a sermon. And so I seek to shine a little bit of light on the inherent violence that is involved for all people by participating in a capitalistic society, and how little it actually differs from the Roman Empire. The ways in which the structure of this society actively removes us from place. Colonialism is a project dedicated to removing people from place. The United States of America removed Native Americans from their land. The United States of America removed Africans from their continent and enslaved them. We build walls to keep our Southern friends away, even though it is our economic and political policies that have led in part to their need to come here in the first place. And in a time of increasing income inequality, people move from high cost of living areas, such as California, to less expensive areas, such as Utah, only to discover that the same forces that made California unaffordable are at work in Utah. Yet, instead of blaming the capitalistic colonialist system that has little or no safety net when things go awry, we blame the Californians. We blame our Southern neighbors. We blame our Black and brown siblings and citizens for resisting the capitalistic society. Another example, one only has to look at healthcare in this country to see that we have forgotten that caring for one another is an original mandate that goes far further back than the words of Jesus. It goes all the way back to the beginnings of societies. Confucius was probably the first person who wrote that down. That we have been called to love one another as ourselves. In this country, affordable healthcare is decidedly not affordable. And we continue to link it to work, salvation by work. Because if you remember, salvation in the original Greek can be translated as healing, liberation, and salvation. We link healing to work. Sounds a lot like we've been continued to be imbued with something that has interrupted that teaching to love our neighbors as ourselves. We have been imbued with the idea that you have to work for it, and if you don't deserve it. And if you get it, you must have worked hard. It's this weird double bind, right? The people at the very top of the economic structure believe they have earned their place through hard work. And they believe that those who have not have some sort of moral failing. But neither one of us have had a moral failing. We've just been removed from place, and we've forgotten to treat our neighbors as ourselves. Colonialism removes people from place because if you know your neighbors, if you know the places you are in and from, you can coordinate, you can collaborate, and you can collectively create change to unjust social structures. Colonialism needs us to forget our places. As Unitarian Universalists, we reject that and instead grow ever more rooted to place, to self, to other, to world, to place. We must refuse to forget our place any longer because our grounding is essential in the climate that we are facing in the next 1 to 2 years. This grounding. And I invite you right now, even just to try, experiment, put your feet on the ground and see if you can feel the ground. Grounding. Place. This is what reminds us that we are inherently good, vested with dignity and worth, and powerful beyond measure. I call you, me, us to return to place, hold our ground, and exercise our power for good. Mark Morrison Reed, a UU minister, once wrote that the religious community is essential. For alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen. Together our vision widens and strength is renewed. So for those that would herald the end of church, I say, not yet. Our best act is yet to come. We are transforming, and we are still necessary to this project that we call liberal democracy. It is a tall call to remember place, to build belonging, and to hold hope in the midst of a world that would have us connected to our phones. If you think about it, phones also can function to remove you from place. So, how that connects to strategic planning, you'll have to figure that out. But I invite you, as we think about strategic planning, as we think about who we are going to become in the next 40 years, perhaps consider putting place, belonging at the center of the process, not as an end, not as a side, but at the center, the portal through which all of our decisions can flow. I invite you this morning, as you go amongst yourselves during social hour and with your neighbors this week, to consider asking and answering questions about belonging. What does it mean to belong? What does it mean to belong to a place? What helps me to feel like I belong? And what is others' experience of belonging to the places that I already feel comfortable? And how can I make sure that they also feel comfortable, that they feel like they belong? Because belonging leads us to recognize, remember, and return to ourselves, to one another, and to this wild and vast, creatively funny and quirky universe that we call our home. Let's get going, beloveds. It's going to be a fun ride, no matter where we end up. And I love you all. Please remain standing for the extinguishing of our chalice and join us in our actions if you so wish. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of the warmth of love, the light of truth, and the energy of actions. And we hold each other in our hearts until we meet again. I had a long vacation. I invite you now to receive this benediction as we go into our postlude. And if you want to put your hand on your heart, you can. If you want to grab the hand of a neighbor, you're also welcome to do that. Remember that we were once all strangers to this place. And if we found roots here, it's because someone welcomed us again and again and again until the day we realized that we belonged. As you go forth, I encourage you to create that sense of belonging, to start by deeply and fully listening to one another. I know you are well equipped to do this. Welcome someone that you already know and someone you have not yet spoken to, and ask them this simple question: what makes you feel like you belong to a place? And let that be enough and our work. Go in peace, my beloveds. Please be seated for our postlude.